Now, there's one item that the city has been working on very aggressively in 2016, which was not mentioned in this group of five, and that is the issue of race equity. While all five of the areas that you just heard us talk about touch our lives, not any one of them does it the way that race does. Not one of them has as profound an impact on our day-to-day interactions as race does. None of them is as powerful as race is. So for over a year now, myself, my colleagues on the council, and our city staff have been part of a multi-jurisdictional effort called the Government Alliance on Race Equity, or GARE is what it's called. The program is run by the Center for Social Inclusion, which is a nonprofit out of Seattle and New York. And their goal is to work with governments around the country to achieve racial equity and promote opportunities for all of our citizens. Now, to do this, we are working to recognize, understand, and change the way we do business to ensure that the implicit and often unintentional biases that have determined our practices and policies are identified and eliminated. And some of you now may know that we're in GARE, but you may not know why we're in GARE. Well, there are a number of reasons why this work is really important to us, but I want to just share a few with you. First, it's in our city charter. If you read our city charter, the opening statement is, "Human freedom and human rights are indivisible, and the recognition of equality of all people is indispensable in the administration of a just government." This is our aspirational statement. In fact, to use common parlance, it's our mission statement. Second reason, government has played a key role in creating racial inequities in America. If you're not sure how that happens, I would recommend that you watch a documentary called Race, the Power of Illusion, The Home We Live In. It's available on YouTube, you can Google it. Not now, don't do it now. Spoiler alert, the government has had everything to do with creating inequities based on race. In short, the documentary does three things. It explains how race is a social construct, not a scientific distinction. It then shows how that social construct becomes codified in US Supreme Court law, and then it shows how that law is applied in federal housing policy. Policy that created maps of cities based on race, telling lenders who they should and should not lend to. In fact, it shows, in the documentary, it shows the exact language in the Federal Housing Administration's policy where it says that, and this of course would be unconscionable for someone to write this in policy now, but where it says that the appearance of even one or two families of color would be disastrous for home values in a neighborhood. It says that right in federal housing policy. Thirdly, it's the right thing to do because it is the single greatest indicator of success in life. Greater than gender, greater than wealth, greater than education. Nothing has as close a correlation to your success in life than race. And this is true not only of our African American residents, but our Latino residents, our American Indian residents, and our recent immigrant residents. Lastly, I believe that our services to all of our residents will be better when we approach our practices and policies with an eye to race. This is not a zero-sum game. This is not where we provide more services to somebody and someone else gets fewer of them. But I think that if we unlock the way we approach our work, it will create new opportunities and new possibilities. So what are we doing about this? In 2016, our work with GARE was about making sure that our city staff understood what race equity was, and quite simply that we started to normalize conversations about it. Because to be quite honest with you, the minute you start talking about race, somebody's going to start talking about racism, and somebody's going to be called a racist. That's scary for a lot of people. So one of our number one jobs this year was to normalize the conversation about race, to be comfortable talking about white privilege, to be comfortable talking about these issues. Now, since we started, every employee in the city has been through a basic race equity training, and that work will continue in 2017. Currently, we're in the process of having each city department create action plans based on best practices with an eye to race equity. And as a council, increasingly, we are asking ourselves the question, how does this policy improve racial equity in our community? Now, we're already implementing changes in our hiring practices, which recognize that we don't have to change our standards to diversify our workforce. We just have to change the way we recognize qualifications and handle recruitment. And it's working already. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we plan to work with our boards and commissions, our social media groups in our community, and all of you, our neighbors, to take this conversation to the broader public. Because we can all do because when we all do the work we want to do on race equity, we will all move forward together as a community. But until we confront the challenge together, little will change. As former Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun, who was from St. Paul, said, to get beyond racism, you first must take account of race. Now, I might, he said that back in the 70s. I might change that a little bit. But to advance the issue of race equity in our community, we have to talk about it. So, we will be asking the public what we should be working on. We will be asking them how race impacts their lives. We will ask them where we are doing well and where we are failing. And we will ask them to confront their own personal implicit biases. Now, I say all of this with the full knowledge that most of us in this room, including myself, have never experienced firsthand the negative impacts of racial inequality. I also say this with the full knowledge that our city staff is about 95% white. But I also say this with the full knowledge that a long walk begins with a first step, and you all should know that your city council and your city staff is committed to this walk. So, in closing, I will just say that while we will do this work together, it will not be simple or comfortable, and we're going to have to be okay with that. We're going to be talking about race. You're going to be talking about race. You're going to be asked to challenge your assumptions, and you're going to be asked to do really hard work. But as I've said before, easy things are for other cities to do. We don't do the easy things. We do the hard things. And why do we do them? Because they're worth doing. That's what we do in St. Louis Park, and we do them together. So I look forward to that with all of you. Thank you.